Imagine a religion, a massive, world-defining system of belief that shapes the spiritual life of over 100 million people. Now, take away the Bible, take away the Quran, remove the Torah, the sutras, and while you're at it, get rid of the single charismatic founder, no Jesus, no Muhammad, no Buddha, erase the Ten Commandments, any strict list of thou shalt nots, and finally, remove the dogma, the specific written-down creed that tells you exactly what you must believe to be saved.
When you strip all of that away, it sounds like you're left with nothing, doesn't it? Or, I mean, at least a contradiction in terms. How can you have a religion with no central instruction manual?
Exactly. It sounds impossible. Like, how does the system even function? How do people know what to do? But that is exactly what we are looking at today. We are doing a deep dive into the spiritual operating system of Japan.
And calling it a religion is almost the first mistake people make. It's less about belief in the Western theological sense, signing up for a creed or accepting a truth claim, and it's much more about habitation.
Habitation.
It's about living in a world that is fundamentally, undeniably alive.
Today, we are continuing our series on world mythologies with a massive deep dive into Japanese mythology and Shinto. And I'll be honest, when I first looked at the stack of research for this, I thought, okay, cool, samurai stories, maybe some dragons, let's go.
And there are dragons.
Yeah.
We will definitely get to the dragon.
I'm counting on it. But the actual structure of this belief system it's just wild. It's this incredibly dense accretion of nature worship, political propaganda, and ancient history all mashed together.
Accretion is the perfect word for it. This wasn't built in a day, and it certainly wasn't revealed in a single moment of enlightenment on a mountaintop. It's an indigenous animistic tradition that has evolved continuously from the prehistoric Jomon and Yayoi periods right up to the present day. It grew layer by layer over thousands of years.
And formally, we know it as Shinto, but I saw another term in the notes that felt, well, frankly, a lot more poetic, Kanagar no Michi.
Yes, Kanagar no Michi. It translates roughly to the way of the kami, or the way of the gods. And that really is our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just recounting fairy tales for the sake of, entertainment. We are trying to understand the spiritual foundation of the Japanese archipelago.
Mm-hmm.
We want to understand a worldview where the sacred and the profane, the holy and the everyday are woven together so tightly you just can't pick them apart.
Which is a huge mental shift for those of us coming from a Western background where, church is a place you go on Sunday and the rest of the week is secular.
Precisely. In Shinto, there is no secular. The desk you're sitting at, the trees outside your window, the smartphone in your pocket, they are all part of a continuum of spiritual energy.
So why does this matter to us? Or to anyone listening who isn't Japanese?
Well, for one, it offers a completely different way of viewing humanity's relationship with nature. And historically, this system explains the rise of the Japanese state, the authority of the imperial house, and even the modern corporate culture of Japan. It's this through line that connects the modern skyscraper era directly back to the Stone Age.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We've established the mystery hook, no Bible, no founder. So where do these stories even come from? Because we have some very specific myths in our source material. We aren't just guessing here.
No, not at all. We do have sources. We have what I like to call the Bibles that aren't Bibles. In the early 8th century, the Yamato court, which was the ruling government of Japan at the time, they decided they needed to get their story straight, literally. So they commissioned the compilation of two major texts, the Kochiki and the Nihon Shoki.
The Kojiki, that's from 712 CE, and the Nihon Shoki is 720 CE. So they came out within 8 years of each other. That seems redundant. Why did they need two official histories essentially back to back?
That redundancy is the key. It's the key to understanding the politics of the era. You have to remember, Japan was looking across the sea at China, specifically the Tang Dynasty, which is this massive, sophisticated, hyper-literate empire. And Japan felt a bit insecure.
Insecure.
Very. They needed to prove they were a civilized nation, that they had a history, a culture, a lineage that was just as grand.
So this was basically a PR move, a branding exercise for the nation.
It was a massive PR move. But they had two different audiences in mind. The Kojiki, or the Records of Ancient Matters, is written in a really interesting hybrid style of Japanese and Chinese. It's intimate, it's emotional, and it is focused almost entirely on domestic legitimacy.
Domestic legitimacy. So it's for the home crowd.
It's the internal memo.
Yeah.
It's essentially a grand, sweeping family tree proving why the imperial line is divine and why the Yamato clan has the absolute right to rule over all the other clans in Japan.
So it's saying, we rule you because we are literally related to the sun, so don't get any funny ideas.
That's it, in a nutshell. But then you have the Nihon Shoki. the Chronicles of Japan. And this one was written entirely in classical Chinese.
The Latin of East Asia at the time.
Exactly. This was the international version. It was designed to be read by the courts in China and Korea. It was Japan putting on its best suit and saying, look, we have a history just as long, just as complex, and just as properly recorded as yours.
So it's a resume, a cosmic resume.
A cosmic resume, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And because it tries to be an official history, it adopts a much more objective, almost dry tone. It uses precise dates, which we should note are often wildly inaccurate or retroactively calculated. And it does something the Kojiki doesn't. It includes variants.
Variant.
You'll be reading along and you'll see phrases like one book says this, or in another version of the story. It's trying to show its work like a good student.
That's a crucial distinction. So the Nihon Shoki is trying to act like a history textbook, citing its sources even if they're conflicting.
Right, it's performing the act of historiography. Whereas the Kojiki is a saga. It's drama. It just tells you one straight, powerful, emotional story.
But both of them serve the same ultimate goal.
Political legitimacy. They were proving an unbroken lineage all the way back to the universe's creators. It was a state-building project disguised as myth-making.
Speaking of creators, let's get into the actual narrative. Because the visual imagery in the beginning is just, it's so sticky. It's not let there be light. It's a lot messier than that.
No, it's messy. It's biological.
Yeah.
The text described the pre-creation state as this primordial chaos. The Nihon Shoki, being more philosophical, uses very abstract language, saying yin and yang were not yet divided.
Okay, very scholarly.
Very. But the Kojiki describes the young Earth as like oil floating on water or like a jellyfish drifting aimlessly in the cosmos.
I love that jellyfish imagery. It's so vivid. It conveys this sense of aimless, soft potentiality. There's no solid ground yet, just this wobbling blob of potential life.
And out of this chaos, after a few generations of invisible, abstract gods, we get our power couple. Izanagi, which means the male who invites, and Izanami, the female who invites.
And they get a mission.
They do. They're commanded by the elder gods to make, consolidate, and give birth to this drifting land, basically solidify this mess.
And they're given a tool for the job, the Amano Nuboko, the heavenly jeweled spear.
This is a very phallic symbol, obviously.
Yeah.
There's nothing subtle about it. They stand on the floating bridge of heaven, they dip this spear into the chaotic brine below, and they churn it.
They churn it. They don't speak to it. They don't mold it with clay. They're not crafting. It's a physical act.
They curdle it, really. The text says they stirred it until it made a sound, kooro, like a churning sound. And when they lifted the spear, the salt drops that fell from the tip coagulated. They solidified.
And that became the first island.
That became Onagoro, the self-congealing island.
This is a key insight right off the bat, isn't it? In so many Western creation myths, a god creates ex nihilo out of nothing. It's an intellectual act of will. Let there be light. But in Shinto, creation is physical. It's sexual. It's distinctly biological.
It is. And that sets the tone for absolutely everything that follows. The world isn't an artifact made by a cosmic craftsman. It's an organism that was birthed.
So they go down to this new island, Onagoro, and they decide they need to populate the world. They examine their own bodies and realize they're complementary.
Yes, the Kojiki is surprisingly explicit here. Izanagi says his body has a part that grows in excess, and Izanami says her body has a part that does not grow.
Subtle.
Very. So they decide to join those parts together and produce lands. They build a heavenly pillar, and they invent a wedding ritual on the spot.
Which is basically just walking in circles, right?
Walking in circles. Izanagi is to walk around the pillar from the left, Izanami from the right. When they meet on the other side, they are to greet each other, and that will sanctify the union.
But this is where it all goes wrong. And this tells us a lot about the gender dynamics the 8th century Yamato court wanted to codify.
A whole lot. They meet, and Izanami, the woman, speaks first. She exclaims, "How delightful! I have met a lovely young man."
And Izanagi replies, "How delightful! I have met a lovely young woman." But then he adds, and you can almost hear the bureaucratic tone of the scribes here, "It was not proper that the woman spoke first."
It's like a little footnote of disapproval.
But they proceed anyway. They consummate the marriage, and the result is disaster.
A complete tragedy. They give birth to the leech child, Haruko. The text says the child was boneless, like a leech, unable to stand even at the age of 3.
That is just a horrifying image of boneless child, and it's hard not to read that as a reflection of the very real, very high infant mortality rates of the time, the heartbreak of a child that just fails to thrive.
Absolutely. It grounds this cosmic myth in a very human, very painful suffering. But in the mythic logic, this is a direct result of ritual error. Because the woman took the lead, the creative act was flawed. The result was imperfect.
So what do they do with Haruko?
They put the child in a boat made of reeds and set it adrift on the ocean. They also gave birth to the island of Awa, which was just foamy and unstable, and they didn't count it among their children either.
So they go back up to heaven, they go to cosmic tech support, essentially, and ask, what did we do wrong?
And the elder gods perform a divination and tell them straight up, the woman spoke first, do it again, but do it right.
This establishes a cosmic order, or at least the order the Yamato court wanted to promote. The male principle must lead for creation to be successful.
Exactly. So they go back down, they perform the ritual again. Izanagi speaks first this time. And from this successful, ritually correct union, they give birth to the Oyashima, the great 8 islands that form the Japanese archipelago.
So, and I want to really hammer this point home because it's so important. Japan isn't just made by God. Japan is the children of the gods.
That is the critical takeaway. The land itself is the biological offspring of the divine. It is the body of the gods. It's why the concept of nature worship in Shinto isn't just about appreciating a nice view or thinking trees are pretty. The mountain you were looking at is effectively a divine relative.
It changes the stakes completely. You aren't stewards of the land, a concept you see in Abrahamic faiths. You are living on a deity.
You're living inside the family, so to speak. And this brings us to the divine hierarchy section of our analysis. Because we have the land now, but we need to populate it with spirits.
Right, the word we keep using, kami, we translate it as God or spirit, but that doesn't really cover it, does it? Because when I think God, I think omnipotent, omniscient, moral judgment, the God of the Bible.
And kami implies none of those things. It leads to so much confusion for English speakers. The word kami etymologically just means upper or above or superior. The best definition, the one that scholars always go back to, comes from the great 18th century scholar Moturi Norinaga.
What was his take on it?
He said, and it's a brilliant definition, any being whatsoever which possesses some eminent quality out of the ordinary and is awe-inspiring is called kami.
Any being whatsoever, that's a huge net.
It's a massive net. It includes the obvious ones, the sun, the moon, thunder, the wind. But it also includes wolves. It includes peaches. It includes rocks that are just strangely shaped or unusually large. And crucially, it includes human beings, emperors, great heroes, ancestors, and sometimes even powerful, vengeful ghosts.
And the key phrase there was awe-inspiring.
Yes. But awe, in the original archaic sense of the word, mysterium tremendum, something that makes you tremble. It could be wonder, like a beautiful, serene waterfall, but it can also be terror. A typhoon is kami. An earthquake is kami. A volcano is kami.
So kami aren't necessarily good.
Not at all. They are powerful. And this is a crucial distinction from many Western religions.
Yeah.
Kami are not morally perfect. They don't follow a human code of ethics. They follow their own nature. This is why Shinto doesn't really have a concept of sin in the way Christianity does. A kami isn't evil for causing a tsunami. It's just being a tsunami.
It makes the world feel very crowded. If everything awe-inspiring is a kami, the world is packed with them. 8 million kami is the phrase, right?
Yorozu no kami. Literally 8 million. But it's used figuratively to mean infinity or an uncountable number. The world is teeming with these presences. And binding all of this together is a core philosophical concept called musubi.
Musubi. I saw that term in the notes. It translates to binding or connection. I think of the knot on a gift.
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
The character can mean to tie, but it's more dynamic than that. It's the generative force, the energy of becoming, of growth, of connection. It's the power that makes crops grow in the field or allows a couple to have a child or helps a creative idea become a reality. It's the life force of the universe in constant motion.
Is it similar to the Force in Star Wars?
A little bit, but less telekinetic and more biological, more organic. And in fact, if you look at the very first gods that appeared in the void in the Kojiki, the Kotomo Matsukami, the distinguished heavenly gods, they were lone gods, Hiragami. They had no gender. They just appeared and then hid themselves. They represent pure potentiality. And 2 of them have Mukubi right in their names.
Right. Takumi Musubi and Kami Musubi.
High August, producing wondrous deity, and divine producing wondrous deity. Before there were even gendered pairs like Izanagi and Izanami, there was just this pure, abstract, creative energy of Musubi.
So the universe isn't a static creation that happened once. It's a process. It's happening right now.
It is constantly generating.
Yeah.
And humans can tap into that musubi through ritual, through festivals, and align themselves with that cosmic flow of life.
Okay, so let's get back to our narrative, because things are about to get very intense for our creative couple, Izanagi and Izanami. They've created the islands. Now they start creating the nature gods to populate them. The gods of the sea, the wind, the mountains, the trees. It's a divine baby boom.
It is, until tragedy strikes again.
Hmm.
And it's one of the most poignant moments in the whole story.
The birth of the fire god Kagutsuchi.
You can just imagine the medical horror of this. Giving birth to fire. Izanami is burned terribly during the birth. Her genitals are scorched. She falls ill, and this is where the Kojiki gets very visceral again. It doesn't look away from the suffering. Even as she is dying, she is vomiting and excreting, and from those bodily fluids, more gods are born.
Wow.
Gods of mines and clay from her feces, gods of water from her urine, gods of metal from her vomit.
It's relentless. Even in death, she is generating. Misubi doesn't stop just because she's in agony.
But she does die. She succumbs to her wounds, and she descends to Yomi no Kuni, the land of the dead, the gloomy land. Izanagi is utterly heartbroken. In a rage, he draws his sword and kills his newborn son, the fire god.
Wait, he kills the baby?
He does. And of course, this creates even more gods from the blood that splatters on the rocks. But his grief is overwhelming, and he decides he can't live without her. He's going to go down to the underworld to get her back.
The Orpheus and Eurydice motif, we see this in Greek mythology, we see it everywhere.
It's a very common human theme, the desire to conquer death through love. In Shinto, the answer is a hard no.
So Izanagi goes down to Yomi. It's dark, it's gloomy. He calls out for her. He finds her at the gates of a great hall, but she's in the shadows. He can't see her clearly. He begs her to come back.
And she replies, her voice full of sorrow, "You are too late. I have already eaten from the hearth of Yomi."
Another universal trope. Eating the food of the dead binds you to that place. It's Persephone and the pomegranate seeds all over again.
Exactly. But she says, because he's come all this way, she'll try. She'll go ask the gods of Yomi if she can leave. But she has one condition, a taboo. She says, "You must not look at me."
The classic test. Wait here and don't look. And of course, being human, or a humanoid god driven by passion, he fails the test. He waits, and he gets impatient.
And he needs to see her. So he breaks off the end tooth of the comb he wears in his hair, lights it on fire like a torch, and steps inside.
And what he sees is pure nightmare fuel.
He doesn't see his beautiful wife. He sees her rotting corpse. It's festering, it's squirming with maggots. And the text says there are 8 thunder deities dwelling in the different parts of her body. One in her head, one in her chest, one in her stomach.
That is such a heavy, powerful image. Thunder, the most violent force of the sky, dwelling inside a corpse. It connects the destructive power of storms with the destructive power of death and decay.
Izanagi is utterly terrified. He screams and turns to run, and Izanami is humiliated and enraged. She screams, "You have shamed me!" And she sends the shikome, the hags of the underworld, to chase him.
And this chase scene is wild. It reads like an action movie. He's running, and he's throwing things behind him to slow them down. He throws his headdress, and it turns into a bunch of grapes. The hags stop to eat the grapes.
Then he throws his comb, and it turns into bamboo shoots. The hags stop to eat the bamboo shoots. It's this desperate, almost fairy tale-like escape.
But eventually, the hags and the thunder gods and an army of the dead are closing in. He reaches the pass between the worlds, the Yamasu Hirasaka. He's almost out, but they're right behind him.
So what does he do? He finds a peach tree growing nearby.
Peaches!
He grabs 3 peaches and hurls them at his pursuers, and they turn and flee.
Okay, hold on. Why peaches? Is that like garlic for vampires? What's the logic there?
In ancient Chinese and Japanese symbolism, which heavily influenced these myths, the peach is a potent symbol of vitality, longevity, and life energy. It is the absolute antithesis of death and decay. So the creatures of death are repelled by this concentrated burst of life. This moment is actually the mythological origin of why peaches are still considered lucky or protective in Japan.
That's amazing. So he escapes, he gets out of Yomi, and he immediately rolls a massive boulder to seal the entrance. And this is where we get the final, chilling divorce settlement.
They speak to each other from opposite sides of the rock. Izanami, from a land of the dead, vows, "My lovely husband, if you do this to me, I will strangle to death 1,000 of the people of your land every day."
1,000 deaths a day, that's her curse. And Izanagi's reply.
From the land of the living, he replies, "My lovely wife, if you do that, I will cause 1,500 birthing huts to be built every day."
That is, wow, it's the arithmetic of survival.
It is the establishment of the cycle of life and death. But notice the emphasis. Life wins. 1,500 born against 1,000 dead. Life always has the edge. Shinto is fundamentally a religion of life. It acknowledges death, it fears death, but
Yeah.
it turns its back on it. It focuses on the living side of that rock.
Which leads us perfectly to what happens next, into the major gods. Izanagi has just been to the land of the dead. He feels filthy. He feels covered in Kigar pollution.
And we need to define Kierkegaard properly here. It's often translated as defilement, but that has moral overtones we want to avoid. A better translation might be withered spirit, Kekar. In Shinto, things like death, blood, disease, or even just stagnation and grief create a kind of sticky spiritual grime.
This is not a moral judgment. If you get the flu, you aren't bad, but you are polluted. You have Kigar.
Exactly. And because it's seen as spiritually contagious, it can spread and cause misfortune, so you have to clean it off.
And the way you do that is misogi.
Misogi, the ritual of purification by water. So Izanagi goes to a river to wash himself clean of the filth of the underworld. He strips off his clothes, throws down his staff, and as he washes, more and more gods are born from his discarded items and from the grime washing off his body. But the big ones, the superstars of the pantheon, come when he washes his face.
Okay, let's run down the list. He washes his left eye.
And out comes Amaterasu Omikami, the sun goddess.
Uh.
Her full name means the great august divinity illuminating heaven. She's the MVP, the most important deity in the entire Shinto pantheon.
Then he washes his right eye.
Out comes Tsukuyomi no Mikoto, the moon god. He's given rule over the realm of the night.
And finally, he washes his nose.
And out comes Takahaya Suzuna no Mikoto, the storm and sea god. A powerful, violent, and emotional deity.
The three noble children. Izanagi is thrilled. He's created perfection. He divides the world among them. Amaterasu gets the high plane of heaven. Tsukuyomi gets the night. Susanoo gets the realm of the sea. But Susanoo, he's the problem child, isn't he?
He is the archetype of the trickster, the rebel, the uncontrollable force. He rejects his domain. He just weeps and wails and screams. He says, I don't want to rule the sea. I want to go to my mother in the underworld. He cries so much that the mountains wither and the rivers dry up.
So Izanagi banishes him. But before he leaves for his exile, Susanoo says he wants to go up to heaven to say goodbye to his sister Amaterasu. But he's not really there for a polite cup of tea.
No. His ascent is so violent that the mountains and rivers shake. Amaterasu is immediately suspicious. She thinks he's coming to steal her kingdom, so she arms herself for battle. But he proposes a trial by pledge to prove his sincerity. They both produce more gods, and by the rules of the contest, Susanoo wins.
And he takes this victory badly.
He goes on a rampage.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the solar crisis myth, which is absolutely central to Shinto ritual. Victorious, Susanoo goes wild. He breaks down the levees of Amaterasu's sacred rice paddies, a huge crime in an agricultural society. He fills in the irrigation ditches, and then he defecates in the sacred hall where the first fruits of the harvest were tasted.
Just totally desecrating everything that is pure and orderly.
And the final straw, the most shocking violation. Amaterasu is sitting in her sacred weaving hall with her attendants, weaving the garments for the gods. Susanoo punches a hole in the roof, flays a pony backward, which is a major ritual taboo, and hurls the bloody carcass down into the weaving hall.
That is just gruesome.
It's shocking. One of the weaving maidens is so terrified that she strikes her genitals against the shuttle and dies. And Amaterasu, terrified and disgusted and full of grief, flees. She hides inside the Yamano Iwato, the heavenly rock cave, and seals the door with a huge boulder.
And since she's the sun, the lights go out.
The entire world, heaven and earth, is plunged into eternal night. Crops wither, evil spirits, the malevolent kami, start buzzing around like flies in summer. It's the ultimate cosmic crisis. The life force of the universe has hidden itself away.
So the other gods, all 8 million of them, gather by the river of heaven to figure out what to do. They can't force her out. She's the sun. She's too powerful. So they have to lure her.
And the plan they come up with is essentially the world's first religious festival, the first Matsuri. A wise god devises a plan. They gather roosters, whose crowing precedes the dawn. They forge a great mirror, the Yata no Kagami. They create a string of kama-shaped jewels, the Yasakani no Magatama. And then the goddess Ame no Uzume takes center stage.
And she doesn't give a solemn speech.
Not at all. She overturns a wooden tub, jumps on top of it, and starts dancing. It's a wild, shamanic, trance-like dance. She stamps on the tub until it resounds like a drum, and as she becomes divinely possessed, she exposes her breasts and lowers her skirt to her genitals.
It's a body, life-affirming, hilarious performance.
And the gathered gods absolutely roar with laughter. The whole plane of heaven shakes with their mirth.
I love this detail. The world is ending, it's pitch black, everyone is starving and terrified, and the solution is for the gods to have a rowdy party.
It's life-affirming. It breaks the tension of despair. And Amaterasu, inside the cave, hears the laughter. She's confused. She thinks, I'm the one who provides light. Without me, the world should be in mourning. Why are they so happy?
So she cracks the door open just a tiny bit and asks what's going on.
And Aminozumi tells her, we are celebrating because we have found a god even more brilliant and noble than you. And as she says this, another god holds up the mirror they forged.
So she sees her own reflection.
For the first time. She sees her own brilliance, this dazzling light, and she's entranced by it. She subconsciously steps out of the cave to get a better look.
And that's the moment they are waiting for.
A strong-armed god who is hiding by the door grabs her hand and pulls her out. Another god immediately stretches a sacred straw rope, a shimenawa, across the cave entrance and says, you may not go back behind this point. Light is restored to the universe.
What is the deeper meaning here beyond just the sun came back?
Well, on one level, it's an origin myth for eclipses, or perhaps for the winter solstice when the sun's power wanes and then returns. But on a ritual level, it establishes the core elements of a Shinto shrine. The mirror, the jewels, the sacred rope. It's the blueprint for a festival. It teaches that when the world goes dark, when you are depressed, or when society is crumbling, you don't despair. You gather, you make merry, you laugh, you make noise, and you lure the life force back out. You seduce the sun back into the sky.
I like that. Seducing the sun. It's an active process. It's not passive prayer, waiting for salvation.
It's participation.
All right, let's move on to our heroes and legends. Susanoo, after causing all this trouble, is punished. The gods cut his hair, pull out his fingernails, and banish him from heaven for good. He falls to earth. And weirdly, this is where he gets his redemption arc.
Yes, the bad boy turns hero. He lands in the province of Izumo, which is a real place in Western Japan, by the way, and a very important one mythologically. He finds an elderly couple and their daughter weeping by a river. They tell him that a terrible monster, the Yamada no Orochi, comes every year to devour one of their daughters. This is their last one.
And this isn't just any dragon.
No, this thing's a beast. It has 8 heads and 8 tails. Its body is long enough to cover 8 valleys and 8 hills. Its eyes are as red as winter cherries.
Classic dragon slayer setup. A monster, a maiden in distress.
But Susanoo doesn't just charge in and try to overpower it with brute strength. He uses his brain. He uses trickery. He tells the couple to brew 8 vats of super strong, refined sake.
He's going to get the 8-headed dragon drunk.
Exactly. He sets up 8 gates with a vat of sake at each one. The dragon comes, sees the sake, and each of its 8 heads dips into a vat and drinks until it passes out drunk.
And while it's sleeping,
Susanoo draws his 10-span sword and hacks the dragon to pieces. The river runs with blood. But here is the plot twist. As he's chopping up the middle tail, his sword hits something hard and the blade chips.
he finds something inside the dragon.
He cuts the tail open and finds a magnificent blade, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword. And instead of keeping this incredible divine weapon for himself, he recognizes its power and sends it up to heaven to his sister Amaterasu as a peace offering.
An apology gift?
Which completes the cycle. He restores the balance he broke. He atones for his rampage by providing her with one of her most important symbols of power.
Okay, now, we need to fast forward a bit through the generations. Susanoo's descendants, specifically a great hero named Okuninushi, the master of the Great Land, builds a civilization on Earth. He pacifies the wild kami and makes the land habitable. But up in heaven, Amaterasu decides, actually, that land should belong to my descendants.
This is the Kuni Yuzuri, the transfer of the land. It's a very sensitive and obviously political myth. It's the story of how the heavenly kami, associated with the Yamato clan, took sovereignty from the earthly kami, associated with the Izumo clan.
So they're essentially justifying a historical conquest.
Precisely. Amaterasu sends a series of messengers, but Okuninushi's sons are defiant. Finally, she sends her greatest warrior god, Takemikazuchi, and the description of his arrival is just awesome. He flies down, turns his sword upside down, and sits cross-legged on the point of the blade, which is balanced on the crest of a wave.
Just as a power move, to say, don't mess with me.
An incredible power move. One of Okuninushi's sons challenges him to a contest of strength. This physical contest is actually considered the mythological origin of sumo wrestling. But Takemikazuchi is too powerful. He crushes the son's hand like it's a young reed.
So the earthly gods are defeated.
They are. And Okuninushi makes the deal. He says, okay, I will cede the visible world to you, the world of politics, of government, but in exchange, I demand that you build me a grand shrine, and I will rule over the unseen world.
The unseen world, so the world of spirits.
The world of spirits, of magic, of fate, and specifically of matchmaking and relationships. This is a profound division of labor. The imperial line descended from Amaterasu gets the political world, but the earthly gods of Izumo keep the spiritual world. It's why today the Izumo Taisha Shrine is the most important place in Japan for praying for marriage and good relationships. It was a cosmic compromise to prevent a mythological civil war.
The deal is struck. Amaterasu's grandson, Ninigi, descends to Earth to rule, and she gives him 3 parting gifts: the mirror from the cave myth, the jewel, and the sword that Susanoo found in the dragon.
The Sanshu no Jingi, the 3 sacred treasures, the imperial regalia of Japan. These are the physical symbols of the Japanese emperor's authority to this day, though their location is a state secret.
What do they represent?
The mirror represents the wisdom and spirit of Amaterasu herself. She tells him, "Regard this mirror exactly as if it were my august spirit." The sword represents valor and the power to pacify. The jewel represents benevolence and the soul.
And she also gives him something else, something arguably more important for the survival of the people.
Rice. The rice mandate. She gives him ears of rice from the sacred fields of heaven and tells him to plant them on earth. This effectively makes the emperor the priest-king of agriculture. His primary mythological and ritual duty is to ensure a good harvest for the nation.
Which brings us to culture and rituals. I want to shift gears to how this mythology actually feels on the ground, how it's practiced. We talked about kami being awe-inspiring, but we also touched on this idea that they have 2 sides, the Nijimitama and the Aramitama. Can we break that down?
This is absolutely critical for understanding why Shinto doesn't have a problem of evil in the way Western theology does. Every kami has a Nijimitama, which is its gentle, calm, peaceful, benevolent side. This is the aspect of the kami that nurtures life and makes crops grow. But it also has an Aramitama, which is its rough, violent, dynamic side.
And these are 2 aspects of the same deity, not a good god and a bad god.
Exactly. The river that calmly waters your fields, Nijimitama, is the very same river that violently floods your house in a typhoon, Aramitama. It's not that the river became evil, it just showed its other face, its raw power. Many shrines actually have separate buildings to worship the 2 different aspects of the same god.
So when a disaster happens, it's not seen as a punishment for sin.
Not usually. It's more often seen as a volatile expression of the Aramitama, which might have been agitated by something. And that something is often Kigari pollution.
We mentioned Kegar earlier with Izanagi washing in the river. It's really about boundaries, isn't it? Purity versus pollution. Hair versus Kigare.
Yes. This is where we get the architecture of Shinto. The torii gates, those iconic red or wooden gates you see everywhere, they mark a threshold. Outside is the mundane, potentially polluted world. Inside is the sacred space of the kami. When you walk through a torii, you are supposed to feel a shift. You are entering the home of a spirit, so you bow, you cleanse yourself at the water basin.
And the shiminawa, the straw ropes. We saw that in the cave myth.
The sacred straw ropes with the white paper streamers, they're used to mark holy spaces. You'll see them tied around ancient trees or rocks or waterfalls, signifying that a kami resides there. It's the boundary marker that says, this space is pure, this space is alive.
Let's talk about getting rid of Kigar. What if you're not Izanagi and you can't just take a divine bath? I saw a note about the Hirogata dolls.
The paper dolls. This is part of the Ohara ritual, the great purification, which is performed at shrines all over Japan twice a year, in June and December. You take one of these simple paper cutouts shaped like a person, a hirogata, and you rub it on your body. Then you breathe on it.
What does that do?
The idea is that you are transferring all your personal kagari, all the stress, the mistakes, the bad luck, the spiritual grime you've accumulated over the past 6 months, onto that paper doll. It becomes your scapegoat.
And then what happens to it?
Then the priests gather all the dolls, and they are either burned or, more commonly, thrown into a river or the sea, where the ocean gods dissolve the impurities away.
That sounds incredibly therapeutic. Just symbolically wiping all your bad vibes onto a piece of paper and sending it down the river.
It is. It's a technology for psychological reset. It's not about begging for forgiveness from a judgmental god. It's about restoring your own vitality and starting fresh.
Let's touch on death and afterlife. We talked about Yomi being a horror show. It's dark, it's gloomy, it's a place of decay. Does ancient Shinto offer any hope for the afterlife?
In the earliest texts, in strict ancient Shinto, not really, it's bleak. It seems that everyone, regardless of whether they were good or bad in life, goes to Yomi. And Yomi is not a place of punishment, just stagnation. It's where the life force, Musubi, goes to die. It's a place to be avoided and feared.
So there's no heaven or hell based on your deeds?
Not in the Kojiki. That idea really comes into Japan later with Buddhism. Shinto is profoundly focused on this life, on making this world a vibrant, pure, and prosperous place. It's very practical in that sense.
Which brings us to end times. Is there an apocalypse? A Ragnarok? A final judgment?
No, there is no end of days in the Shinto worldview. The universe isn't heading towards a final conclusion. It's cyclical. The sun hides, the sun comes out, seasons change, rice is planted, rice is harvested. The focus is always on continuation and renewal.
That's a huge contrast to the linear view of history you see in the West. Creation, fall, redemption, apocalypse.
A completely different model. Shinto is about the here and now. It's about fertility, growth, success, and achieving harmony with the kami in this world through festivals, through purification. The goal is not salvation from the world, but harmonization with it.
Which leads to our legacy section, because as we just mentioned, Shinto didn't exist in a vacuum. Buddhism showed up in the 6th century, and it had very different answers to these big questions.
Right. Buddhism arrived with a sophisticated philosophy, complex scriptures, and crucially great answers to the question of death. It offered concepts of karma, reincarnation, and nirvana. Shinto didn't have great answers for death. Remember, it considered death polluting. Yomi is a horrible place you seal off with a rock.
So they split the market, so to speak.
They basically did.
Mm.
Over centuries, a general pattern emerged. Shinto handles the rituals of life, birth ceremonies, coming-of-age blessings, weddings. Buddhism handles the rituals of death, funerals, ancestor veneration.
The old saying in Japan, born Shinto, marry Christian, die Buddhist.
Exactly. It shows how different traditions can be used to fill different needs. And they didn't just coexist, they merged. For 1,000 years, a system called Shinbutsu Shugo, the syncretism of kami and Buddhas, was the mainstream.
How did that work theologically?
There was a brilliant theory called Honji Sujaku. It claimed that the Buddhist deities, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, were the original substance, Honji, and the Japanese kami were their local manifest traces, Sujaku.
So Amaterasu is actually a Buddha in disguise.
Or a manifestation of a bodhisattva.
Yes.
Yes. It was a way to integrate the local indigenous faith into the prestigious international religion of Buddhism without erasing it. Hachiman, the god of war, was declared a great bodhisattva. Shrines were built inside Buddhist temple complexes. It was a complete fusion.
Until the 19th century?
Yes, it wasn't until the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century that the government, for political reasons, forcibly separated them to promote Shinto as a state religion. But 1,000 years of fusion doesn't just disappear from the culture.
Let's talk a little about the things that aren't quite kami. What about yokai and obige, the monsters and ghosts?
That's the messy, wonderful fringe. The world is so full of spiritual energy that some of it just congeals into weird forms. Yokai are the supernatural monsters, goblins, and tricksters. Things like the kappa, a river goblin that pulls people underwater, or the tengu, the mountain goblins with long noses. They aren't really worshipped like kami, but they have to be respected and appeased.
And what about something like the fox, the kitsune?
The fox is fascinating. It's a classic trickster figure, a shapeshifter. But it also became associated with Inari, the kami of rice. So now you see thousands of fox statues at Inari shrines acting as the god's messengers. They sort of got promoted from yokai to divine attendant. It shows how fluid the categories can be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the big takeaway? We have a religion with no founder, a creation myth that involves churning brine and a botched wedding, and a worldview based on purity rather than morality. What's the final thought?
The big takeaway, for me, is the concept of immanence. In Shinto, the divine is not far away in some distant heaven judging you from on high. It is here. It is immanent. It is in the rice you eat for breakfast. It is in the warmth of the sun on your face. It is in the silicon of the computer chip you're using.
The land itself is alive. The world is alive.
And because it is alive, it demands a relationship, not just exploitation. You have to maintain harmony. You have to perform the rituals, say the thanks, wash your hands and mouth before you approach the sacred. It suggests a way of living that is deeply, profoundly attentive to the environment you inhabit.
It connects back to that ambiguity you mentioned earlier with the Aramatama. Nature gives us life, the 1,500 births, but it can also take it away, the 1,000 deaths. Shinto doesn't ask you to solve that paradox. It just asks you to live within it respectfully.
And to keep things clean, to wash away the dust of the day, the kagare of mistakes and sorrow, and start fresh. That is a deeply optimistic message, I think. A message that resonates regardless of your background.
Absolutely. Wash off the dust. I like that. It's a good mantra.
It's the ultimate optimism. No matter what happened yesterday, no matter how dark it gets, the sun Amaterasu, will rise again from the cave
Hmm.
if we all gather together and invite her out.
Well, on that note, we are going to close the book, or maybe the scroll on the Kojiki for today. There's so much more to explore in this world. We didn't even really get to Emperor Jimmu and the three-legged crow, but hopefully this gave you a solid foundation.
It was a pleasure to walk the floating bridge of heaven with you.
And to you, the listener, next time you see a massive ancient tree with a rope around it, or you pass a little roadside shrine, or even eat a particularly good peach, just take a second. Remember, the world might be more alive than you think. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. If you enjoyed this journey into the way of the kami, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration into the history of human belief. Catch you next time.